You know that person who just isn't on anything? You search their name on Instagram, nothing comes up. You try Facebook, nothing. No TikTok, no Twitter, no digital footprint at all. Your first instinct isn't curiosity, it's suspicion. Somewhere along the way, we started treating an absence from social media the same way we treat other kinds of absence, like something must be wrong, like they're hiding, like they failed to show up to something mandatory. But what if they're not the ones who missed something? What if they're the ones who saw it coming first? Here's what nobody actually says out loud. Most of us don't post to share. We post to be confirmed. There's a difference, and it matters. If sharing were really the point, a text to a close friend would do the job better every time, but that's not what the scroll is about. What social media actually sells, the real product underneath all of it, is a feeling. The feeling that your life registers, that it counts, that somewhere out there people are watching and they approve. And the people who don't use social media decided, consciously or not, that they didn't want to need that feeling, which sounds simple, but psychologically, that's one of the harder things a person can do. There's a concept in psychology called contingent self-worth. It describes what happens when your sense of value becomes attached to outcomes you can't fully control. A grade, a reaction, a number. When your self-worth is contingent, you're never quite stable because you're always one bad result away from feeling like less. Social media is practically a textbook setup for contingent self-worth. You put something out, and then you wait, and the waiting itself is the trap. People who don't engage with that system aren't avoiding in the internet. They're holding on to something we've gradually let slip without noticing. And here's where the research gets uncomfortable. The average person pulls out their phone and checks social media close to 100 times a day. Not because they're bored every 10 minutes, but because the brain got trained to seek that micro hit of feedback. The small rush of seeing a notification, the mild relief of knowing the post landed. Psychologists compare this reward structure to intermittent reinforcement, the same mechanism behind slot machines. You don't win every time, you win just often enough to keep pulling the lever. People who opted out of social media stepped away from the machine entirely, and what they found on the other side, for most of them, wasn't loneliness. It was quiet, real quiet, the kind of quiet where your own thoughts actually have room to finish. Now here's the thing that genuinely surprises people when they dig into the research. Staying off social media doesn't make you socially disconnected. In many cases, it does the opposite, because when you're not maintaining a public persona, when there's no feed to curate and no audience to perform for, the energy that would have gone into that goes somewhere else, into actual relationships, into showing up, into remembering the conversation you had last week without a notification prompting you. Studies on friendship quality consistently show that depth beats quantity when it comes to psychological well-being. People who avoid social platforms tend to have fewer connections on paper and stronger ones in practice. Think about what it means to be genuinely present with someone, not half there, not composing the caption version of the moment in your head while it's still happening, actually there. That capacity has been slowly trained out of most of us, not because we're careless, but because every platform is designed to pull your attention back in. People who never gave platforms that access didn't lose the skill. And spending time with them has this unusual quality. It feels different than most conversations, more real, more weighted, like something is actually being exchanged. There's also something that happens to memory when you document everything. Researchers have studied this and found that the act of photographing an experience actually reduces how well you remember it. When your brain knows a device is capturing something, it partially lets go of the job of storing it, and you end up with the photo but less of the feeling. People who aren't running their lives through a camera lens are letting experiences land in a different way. Deeper, more fully encoded, the holiday stays in the body, not just in a folder on a phone they'll replace in 2 years. And then there's the comparison spiral, which is probably the most quietly destructive thing about social media, because it works below the level where rational thought can really stop it. You know, the content is filtered. You know it's a highlight reel. You know the person who posted that photo of their immaculate apartment probably shoved everything into a closet right before they took it. Your conscious brain holds all of that information, but it doesn't matter because your nervous system doesn't process disclaimers. It just registers input. And when the input, hour after hour, is other people's best moments, your baseline sense of where you stand starts shifting without your permission. People who don't use social media never enter that cycle. Their mood isn't being quietly recalibrated against an endless stream of curated success. And this shows up in measurable ways. Multiple studies have found that even short breaks from social media produce real increases in reported well-being. One study had participants deactivate for just a week. Across the board, they reported lower stress and higher life satisfaction, not because the week was extraordinary, but because the constant ambient pressure of being measured against everyone else had simply stopped. Here's something that might reframe how you think about the whole thing. Some of the most creative, focused, and genuinely self-possessed people you'll ever encounter have no online presence at all. And that is not a coincidence. When you're not spending chunks of every day consuming other people's narratives and managing your own, that mental space goes somewhere. It goes into actual thinking, into the kind of slow, unfocused mental wandering that neuroscientists now understand is essential for creativity and self-understanding. The brain has a system called the default mode network, and that system activates during rest and inward reflection. It is linked to imagination, long-term planning, and the ability to understand yourself clearly. Social media, by design, keeps interrupting that system, always pulling you back into reaction mode. People who opt out are, whether they know it consciously or not, protecting their inner life from constant disruption. And there's a specific quality that shows up in people who live this way, a kind of groundedness that's hard to fake. They're not trying to perform or position themselves in conversations. They're not half present because part of their brain is somewhere else. They tend to say what they actually think rather than what reads well. That honesty can be disarming, and sometimes it's uncomfortable, but it's rare enough now that when you encounter it, you will notice it. But let's not romanticize this without the full picture. Not everyone who avoids social media is operating from a place of clarity and choice. For some people, being offline is avoidance. The digital world has edges that cut. Rejection is public, humiliation is searchable, and the specific pain of putting something out into the world and being ignored is its own particular kind of sting. If someone stepped away from social media because engaging with it became too bruising, that's not psychological strength. That's a wound wearing the clothes of a preference. And the distinction matters because one expands your life and the other slowly contracts it. So the honest question isn't really about social media at all. It's about what's underneath it. If you use it, ask yourself what you're actually looking for when you open the app. And if you don't use it, ask yourself whether that's a real choice or a habit built around something uncomfortable you never fully looked at. Neither answer is wrong, but both deserve honesty. What the research keeps pointing back to is something straightforward but easy to lose sight of. The relationship you have with your own attention shapes almost everything else. Where your focus goes, your inner life follows. In an environment specifically engineered to fragment attention, to keep you in a constant state of seeking and reacting, the ability to just be somewhere without broadcasting it has become genuinely unusual. Not superior, just rare. And the ones who do have it, the people who've stepped away from social media not out of fear but from something more grounded, tend to carry a different kind of presence, undivided, self-contained. Their sense of self doesn't rely on being seen to hold together. They're not ahead of anyone else. They simply held on to something many of us gave away before we understood its value. And maybe that's worth thinking about, not as a reason to delete everything tonight, but as a question worth sitting with. What would you do with your attention if you had all of it back? If this one felt relatable for you, please share your thoughts down below and leave a like. If you are interested in more amazing ways psychology can explain our behavior, make sure to subscribe. In the next video, we will go even deeper into how psychology shapes us without us knowing.